English Podcast Hub. Hey everyone, welcome back to Easy English Conversation. I'm Mia, and I'm here with Mark. So Mark, I got a message yesterday that honestly broke my heart a little bit, and I knew we had to talk about this today because I think so many people are struggling with this exact feeling.
Oh no, what did the message say?
It's from a listener named Lucas, and he writes, Mia, I've been learning English for 3 years now, 3 whole years, and I still can't watch movies without subtitles. I still make grammar mistakes. I still freeze up when native speakers talk to me. My friends who started learning after me are already having full conversations, and I'm still stuck. I feel like I'm running in place while everyone else is moving forward. Maybe I'm just not good at languages. Should I even keep trying?
Oh man, Lucas, if you're listening, I just want to give you a hug right now because, I've been exactly where you are, and it's such a painful place to be. That feeling of being stuck while everyone around you seems to be progressing, it's brutal.
It really is. And here's what I want Lucas and everyone listening to understand right from the start. The problem isn't that you're not making progress. The problem is that you're not seeing the progress you're making because you're measuring it the wrong way. And that's what we're talking about today. Why small progress is still progress, and how to stop beating yourself up for not being where you think you should be.
This is such an important topic because I think almost every language learner goes through this phase where they feel like they're not improving fast enough or they're not improving at all. And it creates this cycle of discouragement that actually makes it harder to learn because you're spending all your energy feeling bad about yourself instead of just learning.
Exactly. And you know what's interesting? Research in psychology shows that people are terrible at noticing gradual improvement in themselves. It's called the progress paradox. The better you get at something, the less you notice your own progress because you're focused on how far you still have to go rather than how far you've already come.
That's fascinating. So it's not just language learning, it's a general human problem that we don't see our own growth clearly.
Exactly. And in language learning, this problem is even worse because progress isn't linear. You don't improve the same amount every day. Some weeks you might make huge leaps. Other weeks you might feel like you're going backwards. But overall, the trend is upward, even if you can't see it day to day.
Right. It's like watching a plant grow. If you stare at it every single day, you won't notice any change. But if you take a photo today and compare it to a photo from 3 months ago, suddenly you can see how much it's grown. Language learning is the same way.
Perfect analogy. And before we go deeper, I have to ask our listeners something. If you've ever felt like Lucas, like you've been learning forever and you're still not where you want to be, just drop a comment saying, still climbing, because I think it's important for everyone to see they're not alone in this struggle.
Yes, please do that. And you know what? I want to tell you a story about my own experience with this because it's actually kind of embarrassing, but I think it'll help people understand that this feeling is universal.
Oh, I love your stories. What happened?
So, about 5 years ago, I was learning French, and I was so motivated at the beginning. I was doing Duolingo every day, watching French movies, listening to podcasts, the whole thing. And for the first few months, I felt like I was making amazing progress. Every day, I was learning new words, understanding more. It felt great.
Okay, so what changed?
Well, after about 6 months, I hit this wall where it felt like I wasn't improving anymore. I was still doing all the same things, studying every day, practicing, consuming French content, but I just felt stuck. And I started comparing myself to this other guy in my French class who seemed to pick everything up so easily. He'd make jokes in French, he'd chat with the teacher like it was nothing, and I was still struggling to form basic sentences without making mistakes.
Oh no, I can already feel where this is going.
Yeah, so I got really discouraged and I actually quit. I just stopped studying French completely because I thought, what's the point? I'm clearly not talented at this. I'm wasting my time. And I didn't touch French for like 8 months.
Wow, 8 months. So what made you go back to it?
Well, this is the interesting part. About 8 months later, I was at a cafe and there was this French couple sitting near me. And I was just sitting there, not even really paying attention, when I suddenly realized I was understanding probably 60 or 70% of what they were saying. And I was shocked because I hadn't studied French in months, but somehow my brain had retained so much more than I thought.
That's amazing. So you actually had made more progress than you realized. You just couldn't see it when you were in the middle of it?
Exactly. And it taught me this really important lesson. Progress is happening even when you can't feel it happening. Your brain is processing and consolidating information in the background, even during times when it feels like you're stuck. It's what psychologists call incubation. Sometimes you actually improve more during rest periods than during active study periods.
I love that story because it illustrates something so important. When you're in the middle of learning, you're too close to see the progress. It's like that saying we have in English, you can't see the forest for the trees. You're so focused on the individual trees, the individual mistakes and struggles, that you can't step back and see the whole forest, the overall progress you've made.
Right, and in my case, I was so focused on comparing myself to that one guy in my class who seemed naturally talented that I completely missed all the actual progress I was making. I mean, 6 months in, I could understand basic conversations, I could read simple articles, I could express my basic needs in French, but because I couldn't do everything perfectly, I thought I was failing.
And this brings up something really important about comparison, which I think is one of the biggest enemies of recognizing your own progress. When you compare yourself to other people, you're usually comparing your behind the scenes struggle to their highlight reel, and that's never a fair comparison.
Oh, that's such a good point. You see someone speaking fluently and you think, why can't I do that? But you don't see the hours and hours of practice they put in, the mistakes they made along the way, the times they felt discouraged just like you.
Exactly. And here's another thing, everyone's language learning journey is different. Some people are naturally better at pronunciation, others are better at grammar. Some people have more time to study. Some people have more exposure to the language in their daily life. Comparing yourself to someone else is literally comparing apples and oranges.
Right. It's not a useful comparison because you're not them. You have your own strengths, your own challenges, your own pace. The only person you should be comparing yourself to is yourself from the past.
Yes, and this is where we get to the heart of what small progress is still progress really means. It means shifting your focus from where you wish you were to where you actually are compared to where you started. And I want to pause here and ask our listeners, what's one thing you can understand or say in English now that you couldn't a year ago? Just one thing. Drop it in the comments because I want you to see your own progress written out. That's such a powerful exercise. And I bet once people start thinking about it, they'll realize they can actually come up with a lot more than just one thing. I think so too. And there's another aspect of this that we need to talk about, which is the unrealistic expectations that social media and marketing have created around language learning. You see ads that say, be fluent in 3 months, or videos of people claiming they learned a language in a year, and it creates this false timeline in your head. Oh my God, yes, those claims drive me crazy because they're so misleading. First of all, fluent means different things to different people. And second, even if someone can hold a conversation after a year, that doesn't mean they've mastered the language. There's a huge difference between conversational ability and true fluency.
Exactly. And what those marketing messages don't tell you is that the people in those success stories often have advantages. Maybe they're living in a country where the language is spoken. Maybe they have a natural talent for languages. Maybe they're studying full time instead of fitting it in around a job and other responsibilities. They're selling you a highlight without showing you the full picture.
Right. And when real learners compare themselves to these unrealistic timelines, they end up feeling like failures when they're actually doing just fine. There's this expression in English, Rome wasn't built in a day. It means that great things take time and you can't expect instant results.
Perfect idiom. And it really applies here because language learning is one of those things that genuinely requires patience and consistency over a long period of time. There are no shortcuts, no magic pills. It's just showing up regularly and trusting the process, even when you can't see immediate results.
And I think this connects to something psychological that we should talk about, which is why it's so hard for us to appreciate small progress. Like, why do we dismiss small improvements and only count big breakthroughs as real progress?
That's such a good question. I think part of it is that our brains are wired to notice changes and novelty. When you first start learning a language, everything is new and exciting, so you feel like you're learning tons every day. But as you get more advanced, the improvements become more subtle. Maybe you understand a slightly more complex sentence structure, or you use a word more naturally. These are real improvements, but they don't feel as dramatic as those early wins.
So it's like diminishing returns in terms of how satisfying the progress feels, even though the actual skill level is still increasing.
Exactly. And there's also this psychological phenomenon called the Dunning-Kruger effect, where beginners often overestimate their abilities and intermediate learners often underestimate theirs. So ironically, the more you learn, the more aware you become of how much you don't know, which can make you feel like you're getting worse when you're actually getting better.
Wow, so the fact that Lucas is aware of all the things he still can't do is actually a sign that he's progressed to a more advanced level of awareness, even if it doesn't feel that way to him.
Exactly. When you're a complete beginner, you might think, oh, I learned 50 words. I basically know English now. But when you're intermediate, you realize, oh, there are thousands of words I don't know, hundreds of grammar rules I haven't mastered, so many ways I still sound unnatural. That awareness is actually progress, even though it feels like going backwards.
That's such an important reframe. So, feeling discouraged about how much you still have to learn can actually be evidence that you've already learned a lot.
Yes, and I wish more teachers and learning resources would talk about this because so many intermediate learners quit right at this phase. They interpret their growing awareness of complexity as evidence that they're failing, when actually it's evidence that they're succeeding.
This is blowing my mind a little bit, to be honest. So, what can people do practically to start recognizing and appreciating their small progress instead of dismissing it?
Great question. The first thing I always recommend is keeping some kind of progress journal or record. It doesn't have to be fancy. It could be as simple as writing down one sentence each week about what you learned or what you were able to do that week. Then, every month or so, go back and read through it.
So, you're creating that before and after comparison that we talked about earlier, making it easier to see the forest instead of just the trees.
Exactly. Because your memory is unreliable when it comes to tracking your own progress. You'll forget what you struggled with 3 months ago because now those things feel easy. But if you have it written down, you can look back and go, oh, wow, I couldn't do this at all back then, and now it's second nature.
I love that. What else can people do?
Another thing is to celebrate small wins intentionally. When you understand a sentence you wouldn't have understood before, when you use a new word correctly, when you have a slightly longer conversation than you've had before, acknowledge it. Don't dismiss it as not good enough. Treat it as evidence that you're moving forward.
Right, because if you only celebrate the big milestones like passing a test or having your first fully fluent conversation, you're going to spend most of your learning journey feeling like you're failing, when actually you're succeeding in small ways every single day.
Exactly. And here's another practical tip. Change your definition of success. Instead of defining success as being fluent or sounding like a native speaker, define it as being a little better than I was yesterday or understanding one more thing than I did last week.
So it's about making your goals process oriented instead of outcome oriented.
Yes, because with outcome oriented goals, you either achieve them or you don't. And if you don't, you feel like a failure. But with process oriented goals, every day you show up and practice is a success, regardless of how much progress you can measure. And you know what? I want to check in with our listeners again because we're getting near the end here. If this conversation has helped you see your English learning journey differently, or if you're feeling a little more motivated to keep going despite the slow progress, just drop a comment saying, still growing, because I want you to affirm to yourself that growth is happening even when it's slow.
Yes, please do that. And I want to add something here that I think is really important. Small progress is not just still progress, it's actually the only kind of progress that exists. There's no such thing as overnight success or sudden fluency. Every single person who speaks a language fluently got there through thousands of small steps, most of which felt insignificant at the time.
Oh, that's beautifully said. It's like another English expression. Little by little, a little becomes a lot. Each small step might seem tiny on its own, but they add up over time into something substantial.
Exactly. And I think the people who succeed at language learning aren't the most talented or the most naturally gifted. They're the people who keep showing up even when progress is slow, even when it's frustrating, even when they can't see immediate results.
Yes, it's about persistence and trust in the process. And this actually connects to something called compound interest in personal development. Just like money grows exponentially when you save it consistently, your language skills grow exponentially when you practice consistently, even if each individual practice session only adds a tiny amount.
So it's not about how much you improve in one day or one week. It's about the cumulative effect of consistent small efforts over months and years.
Exactly. And here's the psychological shift I want everyone to make. Stop asking, am I fluent yet? And start asking, am I learning consistently? Because the second question is something you have control over. And if you can answer yes to it, fluency will eventually come as a natural result.
That's so empowering because it shifts the focus from this distant, maybe impossible seeming goal to something you can do today, right now, in this moment. You can't force yourself to be fluent, but you can choose to practice for 15 minutes today.
Yes, and I love that you use the word empowering because that's exactly what this mindset shift is about. Taking back power from this vague, judgmental standard of fluency and putting it into your own hands through daily choices and actions.
And you know what's funny? When you stop obsessing over whether you're fluent and just focus on enjoying the learning process and celebrating small wins, that's usually when you start making the fastest progress because you're not getting in your own way with self-doubt and discouragement.
Absolutely. It's like that expression, a watched pot never boils. When you're constantly checking if you're fluent yet, constantly measuring yourself, constantly feeling anxious about your progress, you're creating mental resistance that actually slows you down. But when you relax, trust the process, and just enjoy each small step, learning becomes easier and more natural.
I love that. So to wrap this up, what do you want Lucas and everyone listening to take away from this conversation?
I want everyone to understand that your progress is valid, even if it's slower than you hoped, even if it's smaller than someone else's, even if you can't see it clearly from day to day. Every word you learn, every sentence you understand, every conversation you have, those all count. Those are all real progress. And if you've been showing up consistently, even imperfectly, you're doing exactly what you need to do to eventually reach your goals.
Beautifully said. And Lucas specifically, I want you to know that 3 years of learning is an achievement, not a failure. You're 3 years closer to fluency than you were when you started. You understand things now that were completely foreign to you 3 years ago. That's not standing still. That's moving forward, even if it doesn't feel fast enough.
Yes, and to everyone listening, I want you to give yourself permission to be a learner, to be imperfect, to progress slowly. You don't have to be fluent tomorrow or next month or even next year. You just have to be a little better than you were, and that is enough. That is progress. That is success.
And remember, every person who's ever become fluent in a language felt exactly like you do right now at some point in their journey. The only difference between them and someone who gave up is that they kept going through the doubt, through the slow progress, through the frustration. And you can do that too.
Absolutely. So keep climbing, keep growing, keep trusting that small progress is still progress, and it's adding up to something beautiful, even when you can't see it yet. Thank you so much for listening to Easy English Conversation, everyone. We believe in you, and we're cheering for you every step of the way.
Yes, small progress is still progress. Slow progress is still progress. And you're doing better than you think. Keep going. See you next time.